7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you'd stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silent prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you remain standing for a moment of silent prayer, and please remember the children in Florida. At this time, there's public comments. If anyone would like to go to the microphone and give their name and address or the organization that they represent, they can do it now. Just remember the person who does the minutes, they are not in the room, so it's helpful if you speak in the microphone. Any public comments?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Larry Krieg, and I'm here as your representative on the Board of Directors of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. And I'm here specifically because we have a millage, as you know, that is levied here in the township, and it being a 5-year millage, it is going to expire at the end of 2018. So we would like to see if voters would like to renew it. And as our agreement between the township and AAATA requires us to come to you and let you know what we're proposing and receive your input. I have the ballot language here that has been drafted so far and would welcome your comments, thoughts about it. Board members, trustees, you have your copy in front of you there. It's actually on the 3rd page, which in this particular printout happens to be numbered 74. So far, we don't have a title for it that I know. So any suggestions that you might have would be welcome. But this is the language. To maintain the expanded levels of available public transit and paratransit services, including services for seniors and people who have disabilities, shall the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, the RIDE, renew and restore an annual tax of 0.7 mils, that is 0.7 of a dollar per $1,000 of taxable value on all taxable property within the City of Ann Arbor, the City of Ypsilanti, and the Charter Township of Ypsilanti for the years 2019 to 2023 inclusive. An annual tax of 0.7 mils was first approved in 2014. The millage has been reduced to 0.686 mils under the Headley Amendment. This proposal would renew the millage and restore it to the originally approved 0.7 mil amount. The estimate of revenue, if this millage is approved, is $4,849,066 for 2019. This revenue will be dispersed to the RIDE, and as required by law, a portion may be subject to capture by the Downtown Development Authorities of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, the Washtenaw County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and the Local Development Finance Authority of the Charter Township of Ypsilanti. So that's the draft ballot language so far. Are there any thoughts or suggestions from members of the Board of Trustees or perhaps the audience? If so, or if you would like to think about it a bit longer, please feel free to let us know. Probably you can either email me or Mr. Carpenter, who is mcarpenter@theride.org. And
Larry,
he is
Is
here.
it required to just present to the board the language in?
Well,
we
my
re-
understanding, and perhaps Mr. Winters can help out a little bit here, my understanding is that we are required to inform you and seek your advice, but not necessarily a board
Formally.
action.
Okay.
Yes? Okay.
Are there any questions? Trustee Eldred?
Larry, would it be possible to get from the AAATA an amount that Ypsilanti Township paid through that millage over the past 5 years, and how much of that money came directly back to our township?
I don't know myself whether that is either, well, I'm sure it's possible, but it's not as easy as you might think to figure out exactly how much comes into the township, because there are several ways of computing it. And my personal feeling, speaking as somebody who has been associated with trying to get the RTA moving, is that when figures like that are made public, they become sources of a tremendous amount of contention between the different municipalities or jurisdictions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Carpenter if he has
Larry, I don't mean to put,
practical.
and I don't mean to put either of you on the spot, but
Yeah.
in order to be transparent, if somebody asks, hey, is this a good millage to renew, how would the AAATA respond to that, to any resident in any of these municipalities? Yes, your money is sent to us, you are getting service back. If they can't answer that question, it's difficult for me to say anything.
It's relatively easy to answer the question of how much service is being provided. How you calculate the cost of providing the service is a lot trickier. But in terms of the routes that were promised in the lead up to the 2014 millage, those have all been implemented and are running. In terms, if you're interested, for example, in the number of service hours, in other words, how many hours buses run while in service within the township, that would be a start. And the levels of satisfaction, I think, might be an even more important figure than the number of dollars.
So you can provide more information.
Yeah, there's a ton of information there. I would personally, speaking as a person who has seen what happens when those figures become a center of debate, I think that it might be a better idea to look at the service levels rather than the dollar levels.
Okay, well, maybe somebody from AAATA you can ask. Service hours are great, but if our residents aren't using it, they can drive those buses all around this community if they're not being used. I have a concern. And the second question would be, has Pittsfield Township been approached to come into this time? Have they changed their position?
As far as I know, they have not changed their position, but they have certainly been considering it. Yeah. Any other questions? And Mr. Carpenter did come to answer questions if anybody is.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, I see
Yes.
it.
Monica?
Thank you. I see that basically, it was reduced by the Headley Amendment from 0.7 mils, obviously, to 0.6860 mils. That might need to explain why, because I'll be honest, if I read this right now, I'll be like, okay, so why is it reduced? Was it reduced? So you might want to explain at least in maybe, the information that's shared to potential voters on this millage, what is the Headley Amendment and why was a reduction done? Because if I looked at it right now, this ballot language does not explain that to me. Yeah.
Clerk Rowe?
I just, there we go. I was concerned about the language that says, and I'm sure your attorneys have looked at it, to maintain the expanded levels of available services. So I was concerned, like, was this going to tie your hands? Like, what if you want to get rid of one of those and another one? So if you've already answered that, you don't need to answer it to me, but I do know that language can only be spent on what you actually say in there. And to what trustee Monica Ross Williams, I would say, I wouldn't even get into that. I would just say it's rolling back to the original millage that was approved, because people, you don't have enough room on here to explain exactly what that means. And to trustee Eldridge's questions, I know that before we got into this, I think we were at about $370,000. We were paying for the few routes that we got for township. We had agreement, for those of you that might not have been around and stuff, we had an agreement for every route that we had. We paid a certain amount of money, including for every senior and those that were disabled, that were by law required to provide service. So there was a contract for that. Then there was a contract for every single route that we had. And so it was one of the things that made it attractive to the township was that we were already paying that out of our general fund. And if the voters supported it, which they obviously did overwhelmingly in Ypsilanti Township, that would help with our general fund dollars, especially at a time when things were hit so hard. And then we actually ended up getting more routes. So I don't know if that's a way that you could answer trustee Eldridge's, is just to look at what it would cost for each one of those routes. Because I know we're running a lot more now, and a lot more often, and a lot more frequent. I mean, we're running 6 times, I think, down Washtenaw than that we never did before. And I think the majority of those are township residents that are getting to Ann Arbor. I mean, they're picking up the city too. But you could get the cost of each route that's in the township, and that might be a way. That's how you used to answer our questions, or, on that whole, like, what are we getting for our contract for $400,000? It's just a simpler way probably than trying to figure it out through service and who's, dollars for service. So anyways.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'd say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good, certainly good comments. And I see Mr. Carpenter is writing furiously there. Okay, anything else for me?
Mr. Winters, did you?
Hi, Larry. I know it's probably an oxymoron to say from an attorney that I think this is too wordy, but I think it is too wordy. And if it was, this is my own, I haven't had a chance to communicate with the attorneys yet. But I think if you just started the ballot language with where it says shall, so I don't think you need to have the first 2 sentences there. Shall the AATA renew and restore an annual tax of 0.7 mils on all taxable property for the years 2019, 23 inclusive? I then strike out the next 3 lines because it's somewhat redundant to say that it was first approved. Monica's comments about Headley's kind of caused more confusion. And then you just jump down to where it says the estimate of the revenue is, et cetera. So you probably should do a flyer and a mailer, obviously, to explain why it's worthy of being renewed, and whatever it is what services are being available. But for the ballot language itself, I think it's just too wordy. But again, it probably took longer to say that than what the language in the ballot says. But I just would make it more succinct.
So in your experience as an attorney with ballot language, are you're pretty clear that we don't need to explain about the Headley rollback and restoring that? We just need to say renew and restore.
You say renew and restore annual tax, and then that's what you're trying to do.
The only point of, if you put that on there, would be to make sure that you capture the Headley rollback every time. I know there's been some millages that are put forth that says that they will capture the Headley rollback.
This doesn't capture.
That's not what I'm not sure what this says, but.
This doesn't capture, Headley may cause it to go down again after
Yes.
a year. So this is not, capture, the so-called, what the schools did, trying to make sure they're not affected by Headley. You're trying to say, I want to renew, or you want to restore what you originally started out with that was reduced by Headley. Well, make it reduced by Headley again. So, I don't know, it's their call to make over there, but.
Ann Arbor schools wrote their language so that they can't. Ann Arbor Public Schools wrote their language this time that's going to be on the ballot. So some kind of language like captured every, if it rolls back anytime during that, they can always roll. So they constantly have, like you would constantly have your 0.7 mils the entire length of the 4 years instead of losing, so much funding. It makes it a lot more stable too, but.
I'll leave that to better equipped legal heads than mine. Thank you.
Yeah, it's right there. All right, so perhaps you can come back with a work session and do a presentation like you did in the past, or would that?
Sure, we can do that.
Mr. Carpenter, is that, that's how we did it in the past. Just suggestion, and it is about almost $500,000 more than the previous millage. Yeah. I just took the old ballot language and the new ballot language and subtracted it, unless my math is wrong, which it could be, but it appears to be about $500,000 more in revenue than previously generated.
Thank you. Matt Carpenter, CEO of the RIDE. I think through property tax assessment increases and inflation, yes, there would naturally be that.
Right.
The other part about the Headley language, renewing and restoring it would add, I think, another $93,000. So that may be less than a fifth of what you're noticing. And just to be clear, the plan for that's additional funds is to put it back into the bus services.
Okay, we can, once you get more fine-tune on your presentation, but you're just required by law to come here, is that what I understand? By the agreement to come here, but we have a few more questions we can ask at a.
Yeah, I really believe that it's more than a requirement in the agreement that was made between the township and AAATA. It's really a question of you being participants in the process. This is, the AAATA was created to serve everybody in this region, and that's you. So we need to make sure that we are serving you in a good way by keeping you updated and getting your input.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Steve Hudak, 553 Malbetch. Thanks to the board again for doing all this work for the township. I'd like to comment again with some different points about the proposed sidewalk snow removal ordinance. So this time people might ask, does the township really need an ordinance for this? And many residents in the township already clear their sidewalks. For example, the neighborhood bordered by South Grove and Harris, people told me that neighbors will often clear several sidewalks at the same time. And another resident said that they actually pay to have their sidewalk and drive cleared. And I'm sure both of those facts are true for a lot of people there. Alas, though, there's a few in various areas who always allow their sidewalks to turn to ice and become treacherous. Many businesses want to be responsible and want to attract customers, but some just don't want to spend the money or the effort to make their sidewalks safe. And that's the whole point, to make them safe and allow access to wheelchairs. Some of these are on Washtenaw and on Packard. In particular, the sidewalks on houses that are for sale or vacant, and vacant land are more likely to have icy sidewalks because no one takes care of it. In these cases, it's more difficult to even contact the owner. So if most properties appear to be cleared anyway, then why do we need an ordinance? There are always a few residents and businesses who will likely never clear their sidewalks, even if asked to. Enforcement would at least get these sidewalks cleared, and better yet, encourage the owners to start clearing those sidewalks themselves. It's actually quite likely that the ordinance would not be invoked at all that much. But just in case, an obnoxious case of a sidewalk snow and ice comes up, an ordinance will already be in place. And hence, that would make the nuisance much easier to deal with. How much effort and cost would it be for the township? Enforcement would likely be complaint-driven, and hence the enforcement department would only have to respond to complaints. For example, Ypsilanti Township has only about 20 sidewalk snow issues each season. Of course, they're smaller than us, but that's not a whole lot. Any actual time and effort by the township would likely amount to responding to a complaint by contacting the offender, issuing a ticket, ordering snow and ice removal, probably by a contractor, collecting the fine or adding it to the tax bill, and very rarely dealing with a lawsuit. Enforcing a sidewalk snow removal ordinance is neither likely to cost taxpayers anything, got a lot of questions about that, or impose a cost to the township. Municipalities having this ordinance tend to charge the resident or business with the cost of clearing their snow, and also they charge an administrative fee or a fine. Finally, one more point. Lawsuits. The person in charge of this in SIO said, yes, you could get lawsuits. But he didn't think that was a big deal or a problem. Usually anyone has the legal right to sue anyone. But that doesn't mean the suit will be successful or even accepted for litigation. There are lawsuits going on all the time. The legal systems usually see to it that they're actually justified. So, for those opposed to the township providing a service, largely because they might be sued, I suggest not to worry. I think we also have a pretty good attorney. Furthermore, from what I've seen regarding the quality, timeliness, and safety
That's true.
of the work the township provides to us, I would see little chance of any lawsuit winding up as justifiable.
All right. Thank you.
So, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Larry Quit. My name is Arloa Kaiser. I live at 1421 Melvin Street. I have lived in the township over 40 years. There has been no snow ordinance, and to my understanding, there's been no problems. And they were saying on the radio that common sense says to people who walk on sidewalks that be careful. You don't know what's under there, and with sidewalks who have been cleaned, they may have black ice, which you cannot see. So, am I as a homeowner supposed to park my little butt out in my yard on the sidewalk to make sure it is cleaned? With the weather the way it is, how can you keep it clean? So, this also says that, are we going to have to pay for more people in the ordinance department to watch over us? And if you have bad neighbors who just report you every chance they get, I see no reason to have a snow removal ordinance. Businesses, yes. But there are a lot of streets in the township, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to go around and get that list again, that do not have sidewalks. So, is the township responsible if somebody falls walking in the street? A lot of people are walking in the streets. So why do I have to make sure my sidewalk is clean if they're going to be walking in the streets anyway? And I am opposed to it. We didn't need it for 40 years. I don't think we need it now. And if people are going to get out of their house, how are they going to get from the house to the main sidewalk? This is not your driveway. This is not the sidewalk from your front door, back door to the sidewalk. And I am opposed to it. And I know there are other people, and unfortunately they will not come forward, but there are a lot of people that are opposed to this. And I don't want it to cost me any money either.
Thank you, Ms. Kaiser. Are there any other public comment at this time?
You all listen to my little sister. She always comes with things of great concern. And you need to help her out. You heard her say she's been there 40 years. She ain't going nowhere. I am here tonight. I wish I had time to...
Mr. Tucson, could you give your name for the record just so they can get it?
You just told them, Brenda.
I know, but I'm not supposed to. Okay.
She said I'm Mr. Tucson. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. I don't have a lot of time to discuss the things that happening in the township. It's been quite a while since I've been here, but I have been collecting. And that's why I don't have enough time. I wish we had a special session where I could just tell you a lot of things that's happening in the township and some of the people involved in these things that's happening in the township. And then maybe we could take some corrective action to those things. But I'm here tonight because of some information that was circulating in the community as pertains to gentlemen, what I consider making derogatory statements about blacks not knowing their history. I must not be black. And black women are not women. Black people that's in America now is better off than their ancestors was during slavery. I find these things being said every day of my life. And there are things that become upsetting to those that know better and know different. We must not hide anything. we must not push anything under the rug. Because when we do that, we become partakers of the things that's being said and the things that's being done. We must not sweep those things away. We must respond to these kind of things, and then we know that you aren't or not part of these things that's being said or done. I remember a few years ago, sometimes we just take things like this as a little pat on the hand, and someone didn't really mean that. I was hoping that the gentleman would be here tonight and someone would request his explanation, but the gentleman's not here. But when we uphold, things get worse. Let me show you guys something. In the township, a few years ago, there was some Ku Klux Klan crosses burned on some black folks' yard. And we remember this. Guess what? It was swept under the rug as if it's just children joking. They were just joking. Those things don't really happen. But yes, guys, these things happen. And when we got somebody that's representing our community in whatever capacity, these kind of folk should always be put in check for the things that they say, and again, for the things that they do. Ignorance has no place when you call yourselves in leadership, or you call yourselves on the right track to equality. Ignorance has no place there. You know, I come out of Port Huron today, dressed as I am, and when I came out of the courthouse, a white gentleman addressed me as Buddy. Of course, I kept walking because that's not me. If you can't call me sir, if you can't call me mister, if you can't call me brother, don't you call me Buddy, because I don't howl at the moon and I don't eat that. But anyway, he addressed me as Buddy. I kept walking, and then he says, I'm referring to you. So now I turns around. I said, you're talking to me? He said, yes. He says, I got a question for you. Big guy. I says, hopefully I got an answer. He says, dressed as you're dressed, what does it take to become a Panther? I got just as ignorant as him. Sometimes you got to throw ignorance with ignorance. I said, the same thing it takes to be a Klansman. Same thing. You got to be white to be a Klansman. You got to be black to be a Panther. I said, but I got one on you. I says, me and my folk and my family even, I got people that look like you can pass for white. They can infiltrate the clans. But you can't do that. See, it's just ignorance that bring people to levels that cause disturbance. And this junk that's floating around, I would expect that some of you all up there would address it. And it needs to be addressed publicly. And you know what happens then? That lets us know, the community. It lets us know that you are not partakers of it and you don't condone that kind of junk. Sorry I had to come in on that note, but you know, I'll be glad when I get a chance to come and talk to you all about data that I have collected. I was really upset about one in particular. When we look at the population of the township as it pertains to blacks, we don't get that level of employment. And black lives can't matter unless economics are in place. I'll see you all soon. I'll be back again.
Thank you, Mr. Tucson. Are there any other public comment?
Lieutenant Mike Morocco with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. I'm the operational lieutenant for Ypsilanti Township. And about 7 years ago, I believe it was, we started working on the camera program. And I just wanted to tell you all and everybody in here how that has been helping us. I can tell you that the thing that brought this forward to me was this morning I was sitting in a meeting regarding a significant crime that occurred, and some of the information that we're working off of came directly from those cameras. Had we not had them, we wouldn't have been able to go into some of the directions we've been going. So very good, and glad to be part of it. I mean, I know it's been contentious for a while and whatnot, but I wanted you to know that it has been helpful.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, we're going to go to the agenda. The first item is the consent agenda. We have the minutes of the February 6th work session and regular meeting, statements and checks for February 20th, 2018, and the January 2018 Treasurers Report.
Support.
Motion Rowe, support Eldridge. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Winters, do you have any other general legal update?
Madam Chair, just two items, and in light of Lieutenant Morocco being here this evening too. As the board knows, we've been having ongoing issues with the Ypsilanti Community Schools in regards to 3 elementary schools that have been, for all practical purposes, abandoned, especially it's Kettering, as well as Thurston. The township has repeatedly sought to work with that school district in regards to what are you going to do with those buildings. They become eyesores. They become attractive nuisance. We've been made a lot of promises, but this past few weeks, it's kind of reached a point where it's come to a head, at least in regards to Kettering, and Thurston is next. And we've had search warrant executed, obtained the photographs, and it's very, very embarrassing to see how those schools have been neglected and abandoned by the school district. I mentioned to the board in my letter that when the township first approved the housing affordability and economic equity study, there were certain township neighborhoods that have been identified as being on the tipping point, and some of them entering the point of no return. Township board has spent a lot of money, a lot of time and effort to stabilize our residential neighborhoods. And those schools are located in those neighborhoods that have been identified as being the ones that have been destabilized going back to 2008 during the housing crisis. I am really hoping that once the complete search has been done of both those buildings, that the school district will look at this. They have already themselves identified those schools as being ones that need to be demolished going back to 2016. And during that report, they themselves indicated that those schools had deteriorated and had become a blight to the community. We spent a lot of time requiring homeowners to be accountable for their properties, and the same has come for the community schools here in Ypsilanti to do the same. During the last 12, 14 months, Ypsilanti schools received $180,000 a month by leasing West Middle School to Ann Arbor School District because of a flooded elementary school. My calculation is that they received over $2.5 million or close to it because of that lease. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. But the $440,000 they estimated to demolish those 2 schools I identified could have been already dealt with. And now the township is having to deal with a Kettering school by calling DTE, having them cut off electricity because there's been fires set inside the school, people living inside the school were believed to be living there, and first responders being advised not to enter those schools unless they have confirmation that someone is hurt inside those buildings. That can't continue. And so Mr. Morocco is here tonight, and I just wanted to at least acknowledge that I think Lindsay Thompson has been working as a deputy neighborhood watch coordinator in conjunction with the Mike Radzik's Office of Community Standards, and that we're going to continue to press forward and get those issues addressed, because it's not fair to the homeowners to have to deal with this with the spring and summer coming up. And it's not really fair to any of the residents, quite frankly, because those are going to become death traps, and they need to be dealt with. The second issue is that as we continue to try and monitor the activities for the American Center for Mobility for the purpose of calculating the annual payment in lieu of tax payment to the township, we're continuing to press forward with some additional documentation that we've asked them to provide. We think the numbers are higher than what they reported, but I'm sure we'll find by doing this request, we will also get the right number. At the same time, and speaking of jobs, in that agreement we have with ACM, they were required to make sure that they employed Washtenaw County residents and Ypsilanti Township residents, and to give all the contractors and materials and laborers a hiring preference in regards to work that's being performed on that site. I've asked for that documentation. That's separate and apart from their obligation to report and give us documents confirming their investment. And they've been, and we know this is going to be a great long-term relationship, but at the same time, we have to ensure that the taxpayers are getting what this board bargained for. At the same time, we need to make sure that if we have people in this county, in this township, that can perform those services that they are taking advantage of in hiring in regards to ACM, that, again, that language for a hiring preference was not just words that we were speaking at the time when Supervisor Stumble and myself spent a lot of time negotiating that contract. That was done because we want people that live here and work here to also be employed when opportunities arise in their own backyard. So I've not received a response to that information, that request, but I'm going to continue to at least monitor that. And those are the two additional updates beyond what we discussed during the work session.
Right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda under old business is second reading resolution 2018-01, which is proposed ordinance 2018-476, amending the zoning code. Clerk Rowe.
Resolution, second reading, Resolution 2018-01 for 2018-476 ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Charter Township, Ypsilanti, and whereas the township planning consultants completed a detailed review of the township zoning code, and whereas based upon that review, the township planning consultants have recommended amendments to the Charter Township Ypsilanti's Planning Commission involving a series of general amendments to the township zoning code. Whereas its regularly scheduled meeting held on December 12th of 2017, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the planning consultant's proposed general amendments to the township zoning code to the township board with the changes that are summarized as follows. The zoning code reorganization: A, eliminate 3 zoning districts that we never mapped in the official township zoning map. B, create 3 tables to replace uses listed in text in articles. C, all specific use provisions consolidated in Article 18. To move the parking and loading regulations from footnotes of schedule or regulations into the general provisions. E, move trash receptacle regulations from accessory buildings into a new section in general provisions. 2, bring the zoning code in compliance with the state and federal law. A, the Michigan Right to Farm Act. B, the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. C, Michigan Regulations on State Licensed Daycare. And D, the U.S. Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act. 3, add the following definitions: places of worship, hotel, medical clinic, medical office, and to amend the definitions for automobile repair, major, automobile repair, minor, and for motel. 4, eliminate requirement for detached accessory structure over 100 square feet going to the ZBA, require 5-foot setback for accessory structures from side and rear lot line. And whereas the proposed ordinance number 2018-476 has revised the current existing ordinance in such a fashion as to incorporate the above changes recommended, and whereas the Township Board of Trustees agrees with the request of the Planning Commission, now therefore be it resolved that the Charter Township Ypsilanti Board of Trustees does hereby approve ordinance number 2018-46, second reading, as attached by amending articles of the Township Zoning Code as noted, replacing it with proposed ordinance number 2018-476, which ordinance reflects the suggestions and input of the Township's planning consultant as recommended by the Planning Commission. I would so move resolution number 2018-1 and the second reading of the new ordinance 2018-476.
Second.
Motion Rowe, support Ross Williams. Discussion? Hearing none, we have to do a roll call vote. Gerald Rowe?
Yes.
Eldridge?
Yes.
Ross Williams?
Yes.
Lovejoy Rowe?
Yes.
Stumbo, Doe?
Yes.
And Wilson.
Yes.
The motion is. Under new business, we have budget amendment number 4.
I have a motion to approve the 2018 budget amendment number 4 to increase the general fund by $5,048 to $9,011,680 and approve the line item changes outlined. And those were for funds that received on a padlock lawsuit, to put those back into the fund that handles lawsuits, and to increase the fire department fund by $12,340. And that's for items that are later on the agenda for a grant, to $5,183,252 and approve the line item changes as outlined. I'd so move the budget amendment.
Motion Rowe?
Support.
Support Gerald Rowe. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2 is request of Michael Sarin, Hydro Operations, to waive the financial policy and accept the low quote from Fondrest Environmental for the purchase of a water quality buoy with cellular telemetry in the amount of $7,530, which is budgeted in line item 252-252-000-976-000. Motion Gerald Rowe, support Doe. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is Resolution 2018-05, which is a Owner's Dam Safety Program Annual Resolution.
Damn yes.
Is that a motion?
Second.
All right.
Motion Eldridge, support Ross Williams, to approve the annual resolution for the Owner's Dam Safety Program. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 4 is a request of Michael Radzik, OCS Director, for authorization to seek legal action, if necessary, to enforce provisions of the property maintenance ordinance for a 7-unit apartment building located at 1234 Holmes Road in the amount of $10,000, which is budgeted in line item 101-950-000-801-023.
So moved.
Support.
Motion Gerald Rowe, support Eldridge. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5 is request of Eric Copeland, our fire chief, for approval of grant applications and corresponding memorandums of understanding on behalf of the Township Fire Department for auto extraction equipment for the Saline Area Fire Department, turnout gear with Milan Area Fire Department, fire hoses with Northfield Township Fire Department, and SCBA equipment with Superior Township Fire Department for a total amount of $19,045.36, which is budgeted in line item 206-970-000-979-005, and authorize the signing of the
Move to approve.
Second.
motion Doe, seconded Ross Williams. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, the request of Wayne Dudley, the Public Service Superintendent, for approval of updated contract with Corrigan Oil Company for fuel management systems in the amount of $30,030, budget in line item 595-595-000-971-008, and authorize the signing of the contract. Is it?
Move to approve.
Support.
Motion no, support Wilson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is there, motion is approved. There is no other business, so motion to adjourn would be in order.
moved.
Motion Rowe,
Support.
support Wilson. Since there were two motions to adjourn, I went with. All those in favor? Aye. The meeting is adjourned at 7:50.
So, I want to hear about, yeah.
Lisa.
Please do tell. No, I think that was appropriate. Thank you.
Lisa.
I